各位先进大家好，我是南非约翰尼斯堡台贸中心刘威志。南非新冠疫情自3月初爆发，那3月中宣布进入国家紧急灾难，3月27号开始进行锁国，一直到7月呢达到疫情的最高峰。每日确诊的数量呢超过13000例，那一度是全球排名至第5名。不过所幸南非的死亡率较低，那目前确诊数字呢大概是70万，死亡是不到2万。康复人数已经超过64万，康复率大概是90%左右。那因为南非政府对疫情的控制起步较早，锁国的措施严格，在最严格的第5级封锁期间呢，进行了很严密的一个移动控管。那除了重要的民生物资采购以及医疗，所有的活动以及交通是暂停的。那这也延缓了疫情扩散，并且针对医疗资源相关的准备工作呢，来争取时间。那南非政府也针对人口密集还有落后贫困地区呢，进行大规模的裁剪，那将大型展览场地呢改装成临时医院或者是隔离设施等等。在检测方面，南非主要是进行 PCR 检测，因为5到7月的确诊数字大幅增加，那的确也出现了这个检测试剂还有相关的 PPE 防护设施有短缺的情形。但随着8月的疫情比较稳定之后，那逐步也解封到了 Level 2， 那一直到9月也到了 Level 1， 那商业活动呢陆续的重新恢复运作。不过因北半球第2波疫情的来临，那南非也正在准备迎接另一波的挑战。那今天约堡台贸中心很高兴邀请到南非健康产品监管局SAHPRA 的 Andrea Keyter 博士。他在药品、医疗设备相关的领域呢，还有这个品管系统、生产以及风险控管等等的法律规范的事务相关的经验有超过了10年。那今天他将针对南非 COVID-19 检测试剂的认证规范以及出口到南非相关的申请流程做介绍说明。那希望各位业界的先进对南非的医药市场能够有更进一步的认识以及了解。那接下来我们就把这个场地交给 Dr. Andrea Keyter。
Good day, my name is Andrea Keyter. I'm the Senior Manager for the Medical Device and IVDs and Radiation Control Unit at the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. So today we're going to just have a look at what the rules and regulations are for importing medical devices and IVDs into South Africa and what the requirements would be as well as the processes that are involved. So to start off with, the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority is responsible for regulating medicines and medical devices in South Africa. And we've got a piece of legislation which is called the Medicines and Related Substances Act that then gives the regulator the mandate to have control over these products within South Africa. There are also regulations to the Medicines and Related Substances Act, and we've got quite a lot of guidelines that are available on the SAHPRA website that describe the requirements and the processes involved. You can visit the SAHPRA website at www.sahpra.org.za for more information and to get access to those documents. So the Medicines and Related Substance Act also includes a definition of a medical device or IVD. And when we refer to medical devices, that then includes IVDs such as the test kits that are used for COVID-19. SAHPRA is responsible for regulating medicines and medical devices. We do monitoring of medical devices once they are on the market. We do investigations of any adverse events that might occur. We also, at this stage, issue licenses for medical device establishments to either manufacture, distribute, which includes import and export, or to wholesale medical devices. South Africa has adopted the World Health Organization global model for the regulation of medical devices, and we also follow the International Medical Device Regulators Forum guidelines and processes to inform our guidelines for medical devices. This is a phased approach, the way that we regulate devices. And as I've said, we started with licensing of the companies, and the next phase, which would probably start from next year, would be to register medical devices. At this stage, SAHPRA does not register individual products. We license companies, and in that license application process, we get a listing of the products that are authorized for use and for sale in South Africa. When we look at the regulations to the Medicines Act, there are quite a number, and some of them, of course, relate to licensing of devices, registration, the classification of devices into various risk class, requirements for adverse event reporting, and market control once those products are available on the South African market. The guidelines that are available on the SAHPRA website, there are a number, and I think which would be of interest to you at this stage for the import of test kits would be document number 16.03, which is the guideline that provides more information on licensing of companies or what we call medical device establishments in South Africa. South Africa and SAHPRA, we have used an expedited regulatory pathway for products, IVDs, etc., that are being used during the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we're also seeing there is we are really trying to expedite the process of the licensing and listing for authorization of use of these products so that we can allow easier and quicker access to these products during the time of the pandemic. The usual turnaround time for the licensing process is 6 to 8 weeks, but in light of the pandemic, we're really striving for a 7 to 10 day working day turnaround time. However, we're probably at about 10 to 15 days in terms of the turnaround time. And that's provided that we have received a full and complete license application. So the classification of devices and the rules are in one of the guidelines that are available on the SAHPRA website, and that is guideline 8.05. These rules have been adopted from the IMDRF, and they are global accepted rules, and we classify medical devices as Class A, which is the low risk, up until Class D for Delta, which is the high risk devices. And the classification is really based on the intended use of the product, the invasiveness of use, duration of use, and the risk that the patient could have using the particular device. So what you will see for the COVID-19 test kits, these are classified as a Class D high-risk IVD in South Africa, and that is in line with Classification Rule 1 for IVDs, which is contained in Guideline 8.05, which talks to the detection of transmissible agents posing a high public risk. So you can see where that classification of the test kits fits in as a Class D. So there are special requirements for a Class D medical device in South Africa, and we will go through those during this discussion. So we also see that there are different types of test kits for COVID, and of interest, of course, would be the molecular test kit, which is our PCR test kit used to diagnose. For this particular type of test kit, we would see either a nose or throat swab, and then that swab would be processed by a laboratory to diagnose whether a patient does have COVID-19. The second test that we have is the antibody test kits, and typically this is a blood-based test whereby a patient would have a finger prick and a drop of blood would be placed on the test cassette, and it's quite a rapid test kit. It's quite a quick one. Results are available within a few minutes, but what we see is that this test is specifically talking as to whether the patient has got antibodies. So it will be able to tell us, has this patient developed antibodies to COVID-19? This test kit is not used for diagnosis. The third test kit is the antigen test kit. And the antigen test kit is kind of new and up and coming, newer technology. It works very quickly and may be used to detect whether or not the COVID-19 virus is present in the patient. And again here, this is a point of care test kit, so we are actually able to use it immediately, get a test result within a few minutes, and this would be able to inform the clinician. In terms of what SAHPRA has already received for these type of test kits and the applications that have come in, we've had just over 400 applications for the serology antibody test kits, about 150 applications for the molecular PCR test kits, and about 8 applications for antigen test kits. And in terms of which products have been authorized for use in South Africa, currently we've got approximately 6 antibody test kits on the market, about 45 molecular or PCR test kits on the market, and 2 antigen test kits that are available on the market. So the big question is, how do we export COVID-19 test kits to South Africa? And what you need to do is, there needs to be either a company or individual or an agent that resides in South Africa who then makes the application to SAHPRA. So that company or individual or agent must complete the SAHPRA application form and then submit to us for processing of the license application. The test kits that you'd like to bring into the country would then be listed on that particular license application. So what we would like you to do is email the license application to the dedicated email address, which is mdcovid@sahpra.org.za. So all the license applications are being submitted via email, as well as all the supportive documentation would also be submitted to that email address. When we look at the regulatory requirements for these particular test kits, the first document that you need to refer to is the SAHPRA guideline, which is guideline 16.03, which is the guideline for a license to manufacture, import or export or wholesale a medical device or IVD. So that would provide you with information as to which exact documents need to be submitted and how the licensing process works within SAHPRA. Of more interest would be the communication document, which is document MD001, which explains very clearly the regulatory requirements for the supply of any medical devices in South Africa during the time of the pandemic. What you will see here in document MD001, and this would be echoed by guideline 16.03, is that we need to receive an application, and I will show you what the application form looks like. So you need to complete the license application form. If you are wanting to export a product from Taiwan into South Africa, you need to have your local agent complete the distributor's license application form, which is document 6.22. And this would then indicate that the local applicant would like to import the COVID test kits from you. So we'd need a cover letter on the company letterhead stating that the applicant is applying for a distributor's license to list COVID-19 test kits. We would want the completed license application form, and this application form is in an Excel spreadsheet format, but we would also like a PDF version of the completed application form, whereby the authorized rep has signed on each page of that license application form, and we'd also want the declaration in section 23 of the license application form signed by the authorized representative that has been appointed by the local company that is applying. We'd also like the proof of payment for a distributor's license. The cost is 14,300 Rand for that initial application. This is a once-off fee, and there is an annual retention fee that is payable for the license application should the applicant be successful. We'd also require the quality manual of the local company that has made application. So we do need the applicant, whether it's the individual or the company who's applying to SAHPRA, to provide their quality manual. So they should not send the quality manual of the original manufacturing site in Taiwan, but rather the local site's quality manual should be submitted. And again, there is a guideline on the SAHPRA website that gives the detail of what should be included in that quality manual. For Class C and Class D medical devices and IVDs, there are additional requirements. And as we're talking about the COVID-19 test kits, those are a Class D IVD, and so some additional evidence and documentation would be required when submitting a license application that has got those COVID-19 test kits listed. So you'd have to provide evidence of some kind of pre-market approval or emergency use authorization or listing or registration of the particular COVID-19 test kits that you have listed in one of the jurisdictions that South Africa recognizes. And that would be Japan, Australia, Canada, Brazil, USA. WHO pre-qualification is also recognized, and typically SAHPRA does recognize a CE mark, but for Class D IVDs for COVID, we are not recognizing the CE mark, as this is a self-attestation model, so we're not able to place reliance on that self-attestation and the CE mark. We would also require evidence of ISO 13485 certification of the original manufacturer. We want a copy of the instructions for use for each of the test kits that might be listed in the license application. And we'd also like a copy of the label and packaging that would be used for the particular test kit. When we talk about the evaluation criteria that SAHPRA will apply, so we can use what we might call a facilitated regulatory pathway. This is where we place reliance on the regulatory decision of another jurisdiction. And I've already mentioned the 6 jurisdictions that SAHPRA recognizes. Then when it comes to antibody test kits, we are not applying a reliance model, but we are doing a local performance evaluation of antibody test kits. So we will go through some of the elements of that performance evaluation that would be considered in evaluating and processing the license application. So when we look at the process flow for imported COVID-19 test kits, there are 4 main steps. The first step is that we do need an application to be submitted to SAHPRA for a medical device establishment for a license, and including the listing of the test kits that would be imported into South Africa. The second part is looking at the evaluation with the performance evaluation of the test kit. Step C is then issuing the SAHPRA license, and we would, for an antibody test kit, also give you a Section 21 authorization for the particular antibody test kit, which then lists some post-market responsibilities that would be linked to the antibody test kit. Then the 4th step, and that's step D, is that the test kit would be authorized for use as determined by SAHPRA and can then be made available freely onto the South African market. Molecular test kits are the PCR test kits. These are usually done with the swab processed in the lab. And if you look on the slide, you will see in the top left-hand corner, we have got an example of the Excel spreadsheet that's used to apply to SAHPRA, and that is document number 6.22. So that is the Excel spreadsheet license application form that needs to be submitted, and we do need to receive a signed PDF copy of that particular application form when you submit. For the molecular test kits, we've got a communication document, which is MD14, which then provides the regulatory requirements for the manufacture, import or wholesale of molecular test kits or PCRs. And we've also got document number MD017, which is the technical review application that also needs to be completed for molecular test kits. So it's important to be aware in terms of the evaluation procedure from SAHPRA side is if we've got a molecular test kit that is already registered or been given emergency use authorization or authorized for use in those jurisdictions that we recognize, SAHPRA will place reliance on the regulatory decision of those jurisdictions, and we will then authorize the use of that molecular test kit in South Africa. If that molecular test kit is not authorized for use by one of those 6 jurisdictions, we would then allow for the test kit to come into country so that we could do an internal or in-country performance evaluation and consider the merits of that particular product before authorizing, supply onto the South African market. If we look at the process flow for the molecular test kits, again, we see the 4 basic steps. Step 1 is submit the application to SAHPRA. We will then screen the technical information that you've provided as well as your application form. If we need further information, we will obviously reach out to you. We will communicate with the applicants requesting the additional information. And we would like to have a very fast turnaround in terms of the response time so that we can process the application as quickly as possible. Then also, if we are able to place reliance, of course, the process would go very quickly. If we are not able to place reliance on the decision of another regulator for the particular test kit, then we would do the in-country performance evaluation. You may only import test kits into South Africa with authorization from the authority. Even if it is for the purpose of performance evaluation, even a small handful of samples, they may only be imported into South Africa once you've received authorization from SAHPRA. So if we look at this process flow, if we've screened your application and we do need to do an in-house performance evaluation, we would then give you authorization to import a small amount of those PCR tests. They would come into the country and the National Reference Laboratory would perform the evaluation. The outcome from that evaluation would then inform the regulatory decision to authorize the use for the PCR test kits. Antibody test kits work a little bit differently. We are not using a reliance mechanism for antibody test kits. All antibody test kits would have to go through a performance evaluation by the National Reference Laboratory in South Africa before SAHPRA could consider allowing authorization for use in the South African market. So again, if you look up to the top left of the screen, you will see document 6.22, which is the same license application form that could be used for a molecular test kit. And this would be an application form to import test kits. Here for the antibody test kits, I would refer you to document number MD002, which is a communication guideline that provides information on the regulatory requirements for antibody test kits. Here again, we would require all the supportive evidence to come in. We need to have the application form completed, a PDF version, the quality manual, curriculum vitae of the authorized representative, IFU, ISO 13485 information provided of the original manufacturer. And then you'll also see document number MD007. That provides the specifications for antibody test kits. So once you've submitted to SAHPRA, we will screen the technical dossier, and if the technical dossier data supports the criteria that we see published in communication document MD007, then SAHPRA would authorize the importation of a small sample of the antibody test kits to undergo performance evaluation by the National Reference Laboratory in South Africa. So you may not import any sample of antibody test kits without the authorization from SAHPRA to do so. If we look at the process flow for antibody test kits, again, similar process, 4-step process. A, submit your application to SAHPRA. We will then screen the technical dossier and data provided, and if it meets the criteria in the document MD007, we will then give you authorization to import a small sample. It will go under performance evaluation by the National Reference Laboratory, and if it meets the performance criteria of MD007, we would then issue the license and issue a Section 21 authorization, which now includes post-market requirements for the particular antibody test kit. So for serology test kits, which are antibody test kits, and for the molecular test kits, we've got those two communication documents that clearly describe what information needs to be provided when you apply, and you will also see that you would be required to supply the technical dossier for each of the test kits that are listed in your license application. For antigen test kits, because this is all quite new in terms of the development of the technology, we will be preparing specification documents and a document outlining the process flow. But again, it's going to be a very similar process. We can apply a reliance model to antigen test kits, and we would place reliance on any authorization provided by Health Canada or Anvisa in Brazil, the TGA in Australia, the US FDA, WHO pre-qualification, and so we can place reliance, and also the PMDA of Japan would also be recognized. We can recognize those decisions, apply reliance, and authorize use of an antigen test kit. If we do not have that type of registration or listing in another jurisdiction, we would have to conduct a performance evaluation of that antigen test kit prior to making the regulatory decision. So again, here the requirements very similar, the process very similar. When we can apply reliance, the process will of course be quicker. When we have a need to import a small sample and perform the evaluation by the National Reference Laboratory in South Africa, that process would be a little bit longer. So generally, in a reliance model, it's about 10 working days. When we look at including the performance evaluation, we probably add about 5 to 10 additional working days to account for the performance evaluation by the National Reference Laboratory. So the next slide shows the series of communication documents that SAHPRA has prepared, and you'll see that there are approximately 24 of these MD documents, and they're all available on the SAHPRA website, which is www.sahpra.org.za, and you shall just click the tab Health Products, scroll down to Medical Devices, scroll down to Documents, and these communication guidelines are available on the SAHPRA website. Also, you need to just have a look, because there are quite a lot of information that talks to the licensing process, the regulatory requirements, the timelines, and information for communication. So that's a very valuable resource. Also, again, I've alerted you with regard to the Medicines Act that informs the work of SAHPRA, and it's important to note that you must be compliant with the Medicines Act. You may not manufacture, import, export, or wholesale any medical device or IVD without a license from SAHPRA. Also, because the COVID-19 test kits are Class D devices, they may not be advertised to the public. So that's important to note. And lastly, the sale or use of medical devices and IVDs may not be done without authorization by SAHPRA through the licensing process. I have provided on the next slide some information. If you become aware of any contravention to the Act or any activities that are not in line with the requirements of the Medicines Act, you can then report that to SAHPRA's Regulatory Compliance Unit, and you can contact Ms. Daphne Fafudi or Mr. Dion Poovan. I've provided the email addresses there, and you should please report any contravention to the Act or any activities that are not in line with the regulatory requirements. Lastly, I've just shared with you the contacts from the medical device unit within SAHPRA, and you can contact any of us on these email addresses provided should you have any queries regarding the licensing process, or if you require a status update on your license application that you've submitted, and we will make sure that we keep you abreast of the developments and the process in terms of the status of your license application. So with that, I thank you very much and open the floor for questions. Thanks. Over.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sudad Ahmed. I am a cytopathologist working in Al-Qadimiyya Teaching Hospital in Baghdad, Iraq. Today, I will give you a short presentation about laboratory kits that used in diagnosis of COVID-19 in Iraq. First, you should have some short notes about health service provider in Iraq. Basically, they divide into two providers and two sectors, the public sector and the private sector. The public sector, of course, it's owned by Iraqi Ministry of Health, that they give this medical service via grand hospitals, big hospitals that have different branch of health service, like medical service, surgical service, gynecological, ortho, and the other. And also, Iraqi government have special institutions or centers for management of infectious disease, allergic disease, pediatric, and cancer disease. On the other hand, the private sector, it's a smaller and more limited service and capacity, but still they are very helpful because it's easy to give the service directly to people. Usually private sector have some small hospitals, have private clinics, and have private labs. Both these two sectors, they have good follow-up with and good information from WHO with via the Iraqi government itself, or personal follow-up from medical staff via media and published material. From the beginning of the outbreak early this year, COVID-19 was totally a new challenge for Iraqi government, like any Iraqi government, and like any other governments around the world. There is a deficiency with a database, deficiency of procedure, management, regulation, and how to deal with. So Iraqi government was in need and welcomed any foreign help and overseas support. Starting with the Chinese government from early March, they sent a training medical group and support staff to Baghdad to help clinicians, to help laboratory staff, and even to assist official authority how to manage, to control, and to put the protocols to deal with this outbreak. So first, training was in Republic Laboratory and Republic Hospital for the medical personnel about the procedure, the laboratory supplies, the laboratory equipment, how to deal with the samples, how to analysis of the material collected from affected people or nearby people. Besides this, medical staff themselves start to follow up personally, either by social media or by contact with other medical staff overseas. Some Iraqi doctors, some Iraqi pathologists who live abroad, they start to send some feedback about their experiment and their knowledge they get from Europe and America. And by this time, I mean by April or May, a little bit database established, and how to differentiate the government laboratory, how to assort specialized lab, and how to assort private lab to start the service of management with COVID-19 samples. First, to start apply the laboratory test or laboratory management of samples. We start with management with material, management with the swabs, management of blood drops that we collect from the patient, from the contact person. We should train and learn how to apply the swab, how we do it, who will do it, and when. And also a rapid test to collecting blood drops, to do it first with antibody rapid test, strip for antibody rapid test, and later antibody strip for diagnosis of COVID-19 antigen. After that, last 3 months, medical and laboratory staff start to use of the new, the updated material for assessment and measurement of antibody, COVID-19 antibody in the blood, using the immunosorbent technology or immunofluorescent technology by ELISA or minivirus. Of course, all this time, officially, we rely very much on the polymerase chain reaction laboratory techniques, PCR for swabs from nose or from mouth. When we start to deal with all this material, of course, we need to assess ourselves. We need to judge our accuracy by lab staff, by clinical management, by the procedure itself. So a lot of difficulties was facing us, how we assert ourselves, how we to judge the accuracy of the techniques, accuracy of material used, the accuracy of staff and their experience and professionality. After that, when more and more tests start to be done, we suffer a new thing of the availability of the material, and including the kits, including sample collecting material, personal protective material, face mask, gloves, like any other laboratory staff around the world. We suffer this too. With the big challenge, with the big difficulties, and with this suffer, medical staff needed a lot of help by each other or help from abroad. They need to support, need to be supported. So the official people start to support, officially start to support by material, by brain, start support by follow-up, and medical staff and laboratory staff and hospital administration, they start to support each other, start to understand each other, how they get the orientation about the proper management, about proper procedure. So the protocols and the procedure used in March changed in August A lot of things was wrong, a lot of protocols was inaccurate. So we changing. Now we are in October, and new things to be changed. So some modification happened. With all this problem, we suffer next challenge, how we make people understand us by simple words, how we make society accept to do the test, how society take the laboratory test, how they can understand what they should do. So that was also some problem. And with all these, we start to collect records, we start to collect the database, and information on a personal level and official level start to increase. As I just mentioned, sometimes the material is not available. Sometimes the material is deficient. When Iraqi government import some material and suffer to deliver to Iraqi market and hospital, it was good. But sometimes this material finished. People by private or personal effort, they start to import, start to buy from around the world. Of course, first sample provider, material provider was China, and also some European and American supplier. Rapid test, it was the first thing to be demanded. It's not easy available at the beginning. In March, it was very difficult to buy. It was very difficult to transport and to bring to import to Iraq. So prices was very high at that time. It may reach up to $70 or even more. Personally speaking, myself, I was ordering some quantity of this test in China, but I couldn't deliver it to Iraq. But now it's easier. Also, the availability of antibody titer kits by ELISA or immunofluorescent make it another option to work on for the infected people or contact people. And more companies start to enter the Iraqi market, deliver their equipment and new material, new kits for diagnosis of COVID-19, like bioMérieux, like Abbott, like Roche, with good quantity. So availability now it's better, and the price is more reasonable. In addition to that, small company around the world, from China, from India, some company from Europe and USA, making special instruments, small equipment, easy to apply, portable, also start to reach the Iraqi hospital. As I mentioned, now we need to reassess ourselves. We need to review our procedure. We need to review our recommended technique by official and private people. First, homology instruction was very clear. It is not allowed to any laboratory to do lab test haphazard. It should be under control. It should be only highly indicated. It should be after medical examination and physician examination. It should be officially requested. So in order to control people, control infection, and control material. Also, private labs, they need more training than official government lab, because some private labs, they didn't have trained in big hospitals, so they depend on themselves. They do it by themselves, on board by themselves. So it was a big challenge for the requirement. From this, all physicians start to depend on to rely very much on laboratory finding. Physician at the beginning, they couldn't find or not available laboratory tests. So depend on clinical signs, clinical symptoms, what they found in examination. And also there was a big help from the X-ray equipment. I mean, chest X-ray and CT scan, computerized tomography scanning technology. help to find the laboratory, have to find the affected people, especially with pulmonary signs and symptoms. All these people start to educate, start to learn. So people become easier to cooperate, more helpful and support to official staff. When we talk about business terms, there is some point you should consider, you should take in mind. Of course, for Taiwanese company, as my experience almost for 17 years now with them, they have a special standard for management. I mean, they are very perfectionist in business. They want to do every technique and every procedure very accurate. So first of thing, if you have any customer or any importer or any dealer who want to buy your product, first you should be very well oriented and guarantee about payment terms, how you can manage it, how you can have it, how your customer can do it for you from Iraq to Taiwan, because it's not easy technique. Also, the documents, Iraq government, Iraqi port authority have special requirements for documents. Document like certificate of origin, document like inspections, the inspection by manufacturer, inspection by export authority. Also, you need to have some database about your product application. This is very helpful for you in case you want to sell your product in Iraq. Other documents they belong to official, like some forwarder may need certain, shipping agent, transporters may require certain documents you should be very aware about. Very specific point to Taiwanese company to consider about laboratory diagnostic kits. First is the quality issue. Of course, in Iraq, everybody trusts and like Taiwanese quality, personally speaking and generally speaking. The quality of Taiwan products are for us, it's good, usually much better than a Chinese product, and we rely very much, especially in medical field. But even so, you need to translate this good quality in something that dealer and customer can understand, can accept. I mean, if you have a product, you should give some information about its usage, its application. Everybody knows Taiwan have good control for COVID-19 infection, but in the same time, that means you have very much limited of database and information about management of COVID-19. I mean, you don't have much test, you don't have much application, you don't have much patient. So you need to have more data. I mean, overseas, maybe use your product from China, maybe collection, use your product in Japan or Korea and any other country, maybe in Middle East or Europe or America. This is concerning the quality. Also, you need to consider the logistic issue when you want when you decide to export your product to Iraq. You should consider very much and accurately the packing, labeling, shipping, management, because Iraq environment it's a harsh one. We are a dusty, hot environment from May up to November. So it's a long period of time. So in case you ship in this period, you should consider the hot and dusty. Also, some forwarding, some express company have special requirement to ship to Iraq. So you need to check with your forwarder. Also, one important point for lab staff, for me, if I want to buy a Taiwanese product for COVID-19, although I am trust Taiwanese quality, but I need some information, some medical terms, some scientific terms to understand. I mean, you need to do some comparison you need to do some laboratory assessment for your product. Like if you have a kit for rapid test, you need to compare with another company from USA, from Europe, or from China. You need to do comparison between your kits and infected patients who diagnosed by other type of procedure, maybe by ELISA, by minivirus, or by PCR technology. So this study, it is very, very powerful effect on medical stuff. When I see numbers, when I see diagrams, when I see response and accuracy by numbers, then definitely I can understand your quality. As I mentioned to you, feedback and oversee approval, it's very helpful. When you have certain document, certain certificates, quality test about your product in USA, in China, in Europe, how many people use it, how many company buy it, how many hospital apply it. So it's very powerful and helpful for you to have this type of feedback to show to Iraqi customers. I think the major point you need, I give it by this presentation. But on the business level, I know the standard that you do it as a Taiwanese. So always consider your requirement from the customer. If you have any inquiry or question, it will be my very pleasure to help and give you information about this as a businessman and as a medical staff. You can contact me directly, or you can contact TAITRA staff, or you can contact our company in Taipei, Jamy Corporation. All these will be ready to help. It was a very pleasure to me to give you this short notes, and thank you very much to TAITRA for giving me this chance to put this presentation, and thank you for all staff who helped to make this. Thank you very much. Maybe see you later. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Dr. Masoud, Middle East Sales and Marketing Director of Rowais Medical Equipment, with more than 30-year experience of marketing diagnostic product in the region. It's a pleasure today to provide you some facts about UAE market about COVID-19 testing. Then Dr. Mona, our regulatory consultant, will provide you more information about this regulation to import COVID-19 test kits. This regulation and standard has been set by Health Authority in United Arab Emirates for the purpose of improving quality and patient safety, managing health advertising and marketing of healthcare product, also to fulfill country strategic objective and program. We should know that also the gold standard for diagnosis of COVID-19 is real-time PCR using SARS-2-CoV-2 kit. Health Authority also has refrained using point of care or rapid test in diagnosis of COVID-19 test. This part of the facts about the market, and Dr. Mona will handle you more information about regulation.
For people who don't know me, my name is Mona Al-Moussli, Managing Director of PRA Consultancy in UAE. Today, I'm going to elaborate and about our company. First, we do regulatory affair, we do registration for product, pharma, herbal, medical devices, homeopathy, all related healthcare sector product under the registration with the health authority. What we do exactly is we find the way and right pathway for your product. We register them with the authority, and then we can help you to have a smooth market access. We work with two authorities, and regarding today's topics, we only want to highlight the COVID related product, and it goes under Ministry of Health and Dubai Municipality. Dubai Municipality is an authority that relates to register disinfectant, sanitizer, and a lot more product. But today, as I said, we will just go through the COVID-19 products. So disinfectant sanitizers, and the Ministry of Health will register COVID-19 PCR kits and the PPE and face masks. With the Ministry of Health, first I would like to start with Dubai Municipality. So registering in the Dubai Municipality, we read a few documents that I will let you know more about in the next slide. And you go finally with the registration. However, if you want to register under Ministry of Health, you need a medical store or a medical license in UAE that you can register under it. And you need to register the manufacturer first or the marketing authorization holder as well. And then we go with the product registration. Timelines will be mentioned later on. So using the medical store license by Ministry of Health, MOHAP is Ministry of Health and Prevention. We need to submit the product for a process called the classification. So we need to classify the product, and then with the result, they will say, the authority will give a comment, or the committee will give the result saying, we either need, this product is professional use, you don't have to register that, and you would go further with the importation, however, with a specific documents like a CE, ISO, and all related ones. If it got classification that this product require a registration, then we go with registration of the manufacturer and the MAH, and then the product. The classification with no registration will take time around 2 to 4 weeks. The registration timeline of the product will take 6 to 7 months. Classification requirements, as I said, which is the first process to see if your product needs to be registered or no. Certificate from country of origin, that this is the product is freely sold in country of origin with a free sale certificate. Of course, ECE and ISO is needed. Accessories list, if the machine has an accessory list, needed to be signed and stamped by the manufacturer. Label and artwork of the carton, so inner label and outer label. Leaflet, if applicable, because some products do not have a leaflet. Brochure, catalogs for the system or the machine or the product, and clear picture of the product, how it look like, or the device. After, as I said and mentioned before, after finishing the classification, we go with the registration. This is the requirements to register a product. We have an application that should be filled and signed and stamped by the manufacturer or the company. A copy of a valid registration certificate for the manufacturer in country of origin. A valid free sale certificate, as mentioned earlier. However, it should be attested by UAE embassy in country of origin. With the COVID and what's going on now, Ministry of Health has decided to waive the legalization, so no need to be legalized anymore. A copy of product of the product agency, so the agreement between the manufacturer and the agency and power of attorney that these people will be the distributor. Certificate of a quality conformity, CE, it depends on the product. Some products have 510K, as you know. It depends on which class is it, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Post-market monitoring required whenever is applicable. A copy of the product registration certificate in other countries. So if the product is registered, for example, in Saudi, in Europe, in US, that all will help in the registration in UAE. Product information sheet, it will include description, formulation, if the type, size, models, every information related to the product, plus the photo or the picture of the product. Then we should provide a laboratory requirement analysis, as well as the pricing certificate, what are the prices, providing 3 samples if the product is small. However, if it's a big machine, then no need for the samples. Acknowledgement of the company with a medical equipment. It's called declaration of conformity, and safety efficacy data. It's again according to the class of the medical device. This inside the site mentioned below is for MOHAP, Ministry of Health and Prevention. If you need more information about each requirement, they will have some. The COVID-19 test regulation up to date, up to today, in the Ministry of Health of UAE. So UAE will allow only the kits that are approved by US FDA. If it is not having the approval of US FDA, it's quite a challenge to import. However, there is another committee we can submit and they can check it. Due to the inaccuracy and high false negative results, UAE has decided to stop allowing COVID rapid tests using IgG or IgM antibodies detection method, and only PCR kits are confirmed to be imported to UAE. So all home kits are not applicable yet. It's not allowed in our country. This was a quick review about the COVID test requirements. For more information, you can contact Dr. George or contact me. And thank you very much.